you awakening something, and your dreams are the directional signal that are trying to point you in what way to move forward. What I hear is like arrogance and conceitedness. When you frame the delusion as this grandiose thing, it feels like it's coming from insecurity. If you have a true dream, is it ever delusional? Now what?
Yeah.
It's true.
So I want to understand, how do you decipher between dream and delusion?
When you talk about delusion, what I hear is like arrogance and conceitedness. Now, and let me explain the difference here. Because I think confidence is this willingness to try and this belief in yourself and what you're trying to do, right? I think arrogance and conceitedness is thinking you're better than everybody else.
Yeah.
And so when you frame the delusion as this grandiose thing, it feels like it's coming from insecurity.
Right.
It feels like it's coming from wanting to be better than, versus coming from a place where you're willing to take the risks and try and get on the court of life in a way that's aligned with this thing inside you. And so that's what I process in my own brain when you ask me the question, what's the difference between dreams and delusions?
Yeah.
Now, if you have a true dream, is it ever delusional? And my answer to that is never. And here's why. I believe that dreams are not meant to be achieved. I believe that your dreams are a directional signal. That the dream is out there in a different chapter of your life, calling you from this moment toward that direction. And that the reason why you still have this burning flame inside you that relates all the way back to something that you did when you were younger that you frickin' loved is because when you walk toward acting and what that requires of you to get on the court and walk toward that dream. And look, the dream could be an Oscar. The dream could be something like that's an award. It doesn't matter. It's in the lane of acting. What I believe about dreams is that the dreams are deeply personal. They are connected to that flame inside you. You were hardwired with them when you were born. It is absolutely part of why you're curious about things, why you're interested in things naturally. This is part of your natural intelligence. And that when you get on the court and you start walking toward them, that is what's supposed to happen. Because if you allow yourself to take on some roles in acting, it's going to make something come alive inside of you. That's the purpose of your dreams. It's to make that flame burn brighter inside of you. It's about you awakening something, and your dreams are the directional signal that are trying to point you in what way to move forward. Going back to my daughter, will she ever have a stadium tour? I don't freaking know. She might. That's not the point. The point is to have something come alive inside herself by getting on the court of her life and writing music and putting it out there.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, happens. The reason why I wanted to launch the Mel Robbins podcast is not so that it could become the #1 podcast in the world. Of course I have those goals. Of course I want to be the #1 female podcast host in the world. Of course that's what I want. But the reason why I am pursuing this is because I wanted to connect with people at a deeper level. I knew that I would come creatively alive. I knew that I wanted to build an ongoing conversation that was deeper. And I also knew I wanted to learn more, because when you're constantly putting out content, or you're standing on stages, or you're writing books, it's kind of a one-way conversation.
Yeah.
And so part of my solve for loneliness was to stop griping about it to myself and to go, well, what would actually make me feel more connected? What would be of more service to people? What would create a deeper impact? That's why I'm doing this thing.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting at. That the clarity, and the reason why I really want to get this really clear for people is that I had a friend last night I was talking to, and they want to start a podcast, and it was the most beautiful intention, right? Everyone wants to start a podcast today. Everyone wants to start anything today.
And they
right?
should.
Like it's very and they should. But what I've learned is that anything I've started intentionally has not only more likely brought out the consistency and creativity for me, it's not only been successful, it's also made me happy. And so what I'm trying to get to is, how do you plant a seed that goes all the way from not only growing consistently to giving you joy as it grows, to then giving you that flower, to then giving you that fruit, to then giving you the seed to do more, rather than like, I got the flower, we then cut it, it then broke. And, so when I look at it, I go, I think a lot of people are so obsessed with the result that all they get might be the result. And then you have nothing else. And then that result feels dissatisfying. It's like when we had Gwyneth Paltrow on the podcast, she talked about how like winning an Oscar in her teens, like removed all aspiration, because she goes, well, what do you do next, right? Like when you've done that, you've done the epitome, the peak of that career in your teens. And now it's like, well, what do you do next? And it's like, well, if it was only about the result, not speaking about her, but if it was only about the result, then you stop. And so I just want to clarify that what you just said is, you started it not to be number one. You started it because of the impact you wanted to make, the stories you wanted to tell, the connection with your audience. And I think if people leaned more into that, to me, that's the real dream.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I keep bringing up my daughter because she's an artist.
Yeah.
And when she leans into the fact that she's not trying to impress her friends in her pop music program, she's not trying to impress anybody.
Yeah.
She wants to tell stories.
Yeah.
With her music that inspire people.
Yeah.
And when you really get into the reason why you're doing something. So I'm going to give everybody another visual, because there are two visuals that I think about a lot in life. For me, one of the most powerful things that I use to coach myself is that when I'm in the middle of something, I always remind myself I'm on the bridge. So in launching this podcast, something I've been thinking about for more than 8 years, something I've talked myself out of for a long time, and now we're here. I know that this is literally step one on a long suspension bridge that is leading me somewhere. And when you remind yourself that you're just on the bridge, you stop focusing on how long is it going to take and what's it going to feel like, and I'm not there yet. You are on the bridge, and you are going to be on the bridge until you get to this other side. And then guess what happens when you get to the other side? There's another freaking bridge.
Yeah.
Every single episode is like its own bridge.
Yeah.
The other visual that I use a lot is a trail leading up a mountain, because the research is so conclusive, and Jay and I can try to beat it into your head, that meaning comes from working on something. I'm going to say it again. Meaning comes from working on something with intention that has importance to you. It's that simple. You can create meaning in your life by planting a garden if it's important to you. And for me, I think a lot about, the act of going for a hike. The purpose of going for a hike, ironically, is not to get to the top. It's to be on the trail. And if you constantly stare at the top, you're going to be out of breath. You're going to tell yourself you have so much longer. When are we ever going to get there? And you are going to miss the entire point of your freaking life, which is the ride, the trail, the bridge, the mile markers, all of it. And so part of my desire to be happier is to continually remind myself, it is not about getting on that mountain, because when you get to the top of that mountain, the top of one mountain's just the bottom of another one. And if you're going up, eventually you got to come back down. Like, that is just life. If you focus on the freaking trail, whatever step you're on, and you keep reminding yourself, this is going to lead me somewhere, that is where the meaning comes in your life. Because Jay and I will both tell you guys that you put all this effort into writing a book, it publishes, you're like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
And we want it to be something else. We want to think that there is this silver bullet that if you get to the mountain, if you launch the podcast, if you meet the person of your dreams, then you'll be happy. And the truth is, for me personally, happiness was really about ending campaigns of misery in my mind. It was about identifying where I was arguing against myself and my potential. And it was allowing myself to get back on the trail or start walking across that bridge.
Yeah, that's I love those visuals. They're so powerful and so beautiful. And I mean, when you said the bridge one, it reminded me of, I believe this is from the Christian tradition. I believe it's from the Bible, but this statement says, the world is like a bridge. Don't build your house on it, cross over it. And I've always spiritually gravitated towards that statement very deeply. So when you said bridge, that was the first thing that came to my mind. The world is like a bridge.
I also like that term.
Yeah.
A couple reasons. So,
Yeah.
I was telling everybody earlier about how I woke up this morning and I'm here visiting my daughter who's 22 and a senior in college, and I felt this profound sadness. And I noticed it and I allowed myself to feel it because I wouldn't feel that if I didn't love her so deeply, right? And then I visualized this bridge, that this is just one step on a very long bridge that I'm crossing. And a bridge that, as a parent, like, the most important thing that I need to do as a parent is to encourage my children to fly into this world and to leave and to become who they're meant to become, which means they're going to leave. And there are a lot of goodbyes and it sucks, but it's also beautiful. And I also love this idea of a bridge because when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to separation, there is this concept when you say goodbye to somebody or when you're about to leave somebody who's going to do something anxious, is you bridge that moment to the next moment you're going to see them. So I'm sure you do this when you say goodbye to your parents in the UK. You hug and say, I can't, for me, I just said, I can't wait to see you on Thanksgiving break. I can't wait to hear how this thing goes tomorrow, so that you are staying connected and bridging and closing that kind of loop of something's ending, because things are not truly really ending.
Yeah.
They're always beginnings to something else.
Yeah.